You think you know naval warfare? Bronze Age ramming, wooden ships trading blows, maybe some fire arrows. But in 480 BCE, 370 Greek triremes faced down 700 Persian vessels in the Straits of Salamis and pulled off something that changed the course of Western civilization forever. Not through superior numbers, not through better ships. Through a trap so perfect that the Persian Empire never recovered its naval supremacy in the Aegean. How do you turn geography into a weapon? How do you make an enemy's size their weakness? What happens when the fate of democracy hangs on a single morning's battle? If you value documented ancient military history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from Herodotus and archaeological evidence from the Salamis battlefield. Now back to the story. The year is 480 BCE. Xerxes has crossed the Hellespont with the largest invasion force the ancient world has ever seen. 800,000 infantry, 47,000 cavalry, 1,207 warships according to Herodotus, though modern estimates put the naval force closer to 700 vessels. The Greek city-states are fracturing. Some submit, others flee. Athens evacuates its entire population to the island of Salamis, leaving their city empty for Persian torches. But Themistocles has a plan. The Athenian admiral knows something about Persian naval tactics that Xerxes doesn't realize the Greeks understand. Persian ships are heavier, built for ramming in open water where their superior numbers can surround and overwhelm. Greek triremes are lighter, faster, designed for quick turns and hit-and-run attacks. In open ocean, the Persians win through mass. In narrow straits, that mass becomes a liability. Salamis Strait is 800 meters wide at its narrowest point. Archaeological surveys confirm Bronze Age settlements on both shores, meaning the Greeks knew every rock, every current, every wind pattern. The Persians are entering blind water with ships that need room to maneuver. Themistocles sends a slave named Sisinus to Xerxes with false intelligence. The message is simple. The Greek fleet is planning to escape during the night. Attack at dawn and you can trap them against the shoreline. Xerxes takes the bait. The Persian fleet moves into position, blocking both exits from the strait. They've just walked into the killing ground. But first, you need to understand what a trireme actually is. 170 oarsmen, 37 meters long, 5 meters wide, 3 banks of oars working in perfect synchronization. The top bank, the Threnites, sit 2 meters above the waterline. Middle bank, the Zygites, 18 inches lower. Bottom bank, the Thelamians, just above the waves. Every oarsman knows his stroke rate, his breathing pattern, his exact position in the ship's rhythm of death. The bronze ram weighs exactly 203 pounds, solid bronze cast in a foundry, shaped like a boar's head with 3 horizontal blades, mounted at the waterline where physics does the killing. A trireme, moving at 8 knots, delivers 11 tons of impact force, enough to punch through 4 inches of cedar planking and keep going until it hits the opposite hull. Greek crews train for years to perfect the ramming attack. Approach at an angle, hit just forward of the enemy's midpoint, reverse immediately before your ram gets stuck in their dying ship. If executed correctly, the enemy vessel sinks in under 3 minutes. If executed poorly, both ships go down together. The Persians know this. They've faced Greek triremes before, but they've never faced them in a trap. Dawn, September 23rd, 480 BCE. The Persian fleet enters Salamis Strait in formation. 700 ships trying to navigate waters barely wide enough for 50 vessels abreast. Their front line consists of Phoenician and Egyptian squadrons, their best sailors, their most experienced crews. Behind them, the Ionian Greeks fighting for Persia, many against their will. At the rear, Xerxes himself on a golden throne atop Mount Agaleos, watching his empire's naval power crush the last hope of Greek resistance. The Persian admiral is Ariabignes, half-brother to Xerxes, commander of the entire Phoenician fleet. His flagship carries a crew of 230 men. Purple sails marked with the Royal Lion, gold-plated ram. This is the ship that will lead the final assault on Greek freedom. It will be at the bottom of Salamis Bay before the sun reaches noon. The trap is already sprung. Greek triremes are positioned in 3 lines inside the strait. The Athenians hold the left wing, 180 vessels under Themistocles. The right wing belongs to the Spartans and Aeginetans, 90 ships total. In the center, the remaining city-states with their 100 remaining triremes. Every ship crew knows the plan. Wait for the signal. Let them come deeper. Then turn geography into slaughter. The signal comes from Themistocles himself, a bronze trumpet blast that echoes off the cliffs of Salamis. But it's not just sound. It's coordination refined to deadly perfection. Every Greek captain knows his target, his angle of attack, his escape route. The Persians are still trying to form battle lines in water too narrow for proper formation. The Persian vanguard reaches the Narrows. This is where physics becomes weapons. 700 ships compressed into a space meant for a few dozen creates instant chaos. Ships collide with their own allies, oars tangle and snap like kindling. The carefully maintained battle formation disintegrates into a traffic jam of wood and bronze and desperate men. Persian ships are trapped by their own numbers. The Phoenicians in front can't retreat because Egyptian vessels block their rear. Egyptian ships can't advance because Phoenician wrecks clog the strait. Ionian crews find themselves wedged between Persian allies who trust them and Greek enemies who want them dead. Then, the Greeks attack. The Athenian left wing strikes first. 180 triremes moving in perfect coordination. Their bronze-sheathed rams aimed at Persian hulls. Impact speed determines penetration depth. Archaeological experiments show that a trireme moving at 7 knots can punch through 4 inches of cedar planking. Greek crews are hitting 8 knots in perfect formation. The first Persian ships die in minutes. Arabignes, flagship, takes 3 rams simultaneously, 1 in the bow, splitting her forward compartment, 1 amidships, snapping her keel, 1 in the stern, destroying her steering mechanism. Purple sails collapse into Salamis Bay. The Persian admiral dies in the water, weighed down by ceremonial armor that was meant to celebrate victory over Athens. But this isn't random ramming. Every Greek crew has trained for years in these exact waters. They know how to use the morning wind that funnels through the strait from the southwest at exactly 7 knots. They know the rocks that can trap a damaged ship, the Psokonavos Reef on the northern shore, Erebus Point on the south. They know how to coordinate attacks so that Persian vessels can't support each other. The morning wind is crucial. Persian ships are heavier, harder to maneuver in close quarters. Greek triremes use the wind to accelerate their ramming attacks, then ride it away from Persian counterstrikes. What looks like superior seamanship is actually superior preparation. The Greeks have been practicing in Salamis Bay for months. The Phoenician squadron breaks first. These are the best sailors in the Persian fleet. Crews that have conquered Cyprus and the Levant and the islands of the eastern Mediterranean, ships captained by men who learned navigation from their grandfathers, who can read currents and winds like written scrolls. But their vessels are designed for open water combat where superior numbers can flank and surround enemy formations. In the narrow strait, their size works against them. Greek triremes dart between them like wolves among cattle, ramming hulls, shearing oars, boarding damaged vessels. A Phoenician ship needs 300 meters to complete a turn. In Salamis Strait, they have barely 100 meters before hitting the opposite shore. Persian captains start ramming their own allies in desperate attempts to escape the killing zone. Xerxes watches from his throne as his naval supremacy dissolves into chaos and sinking wood. The great king brought scribes to record his glorious victory over the Greeks. Instead, they're documenting the destruction of Persian naval power in the Aegean. Royal secretaries write down the names of dead commanders, sinking ships, tactical failures that will be studied in Persian military academies for the next 2 centuries. If you value documented ancient military history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. Now back to the story. The center collapses next. Ionian Greek ships fighting for Persia find themselves trapped between their Persian allies and their Greek enemies. These are crews from Chios, Lesbos, Samos, islands that submitted to Persian rule after Darius conquered the Aegean 20 years earlier. Many are sailing under Persian colors only because their families are hostages in Persepolis. When the battle turns, loyalties shift with it. Captain after captain orders his crew to ram Persian vessels instead of Greek ones. Ships flying Persian banners suddenly turn their bronze rams against their former allies. The strait fills with Persian blood spilled by Persian subjects who choose freedom over empire when the moment comes. Ionian crews surrender immediately to Greek boarding parties. Others ram their own Persian escorts and flee toward the Athenian shoreline. Some beach their vessels and swim to Salamis Island, abandoning their ships rather than fight for Xerxes. The narrow strait becomes a graveyard of broken ships and drowning men wearing Persian armor. Archaeological evidence from the seafloor confirms the slaughter. Bronze ram fragments scattered across 2 square kilometers of seabed. Pottery shards from ship stores. Amphorae that once held Persian wine and grain and olive oil. Human remains still wearing Persian armor. Bronze scales corroded by 25 centuries of salt water. Spear points, sword hilts, arrowheads by the thousands. The battle lasted 6 hours according to Herodotus. The killing happened in the first 2. Persian casualties are catastrophic. Herodotus records the deaths of specific Persian commanders by name and rank and the manner of their dying. Arabignes, Xerxes, own half-brother. Killed when his flagship is rammed and boarded by Athenian marines. His body is never recovered from Salamis Bay. Sisames of Mylasa, admiral of the Carian contingent, drowned when his vessel's hull splits along the keel line. Demusius of Halicarnassus, his crew massacred after running aground on the rocky Salamis shore. Cyanesis of Cilicia loses 12 ships in the first hour. Gorgas, the Cyprian, watches his entire squadron sink or surrender. Tetramnestus of Sidon dies when Greek fire arrows ignite his ship's tarred rigging. The water around Salamis Island turns red with Persian blood. Greek losses are minimal, 40 ships damaged according to contemporary accounts, less than 1,000 men dead or wounded out of 67,000 Greek sailors. The mathematics of naval warfare just shifted permanently in favor of the West, but the strategic consequences run deeper than casualty counts. Xerxes loses more than ships at Salamis. He loses the Persian Navy's reputation for invincibility. Word spreads across the Aegean that the great king's fleet can be beaten, that Persian gold can't buy victory against Greek tactics and Greek courage. Allied cities that submitted to Persian rule begin reconsidering their loyalty. Revolt spreads from island to island. More critically, Xerxes loses his supply lines. The Persian army in Greece depends on naval resupply from Asia Minor, grain ships from Egypt, silver from Lydia, weapons from the foundries of Babylon. With his fleet shattered, feeding 800,000 troops becomes impossible. The logistics of ancient warfare are brutal and unforgiving. Each Persian soldier requires 2 pounds of grain per day. 800,000 men need 1,600,000 pounds of food daily. Transport that by land, and you need 40,000 pack animals, each requiring fodder and water and veterinary care. The numbers don't work. Persian armies conquered through speed and naval support. Remove the ships and the entire war machine grinds to a halt. Within weeks, Xerxes is forced to retreat across the Hellespont with the majority of his army, leaving only a token force under his cousin Mardonius to maintain Persian presence in Hellas. 50,000 men instead of 800,000. The invasion force becomes an occupation force, becomes a liability. That force will be destroyed at Plataea the following year. Greek hoplites will finish what Greek sailors started at Salamis. The Battle of Salamis doesn't just save Greece, it preserves the political system that will give birth to philosophy, drama, democracy, and scientific method. If Xerxes wins at Salamis, Greek city-states become Persian satrapies, ruled by appointed governors from Susa. No Parthenon rising above Athens. No Socrates questioning authority in the Agora. No Aristotle teaching Alexander. No Alexander conquering the known world and spreading Greek culture from Egypt to India. The intellectual foundation of Western civilization dies in the Straits of Salamis on a September morning in 480 BCE. Democracy, philosophy, theater, history, medicine, mathematics, all of it depends on Greek independence. And Greek independence depends on Themistocles. Understanding how to turn geography into a weapon. Persian defeat at Salamis reverberates across the ancient world. Egyptian priests who served Persian pharaohs begin plotting rebellion. Babylonian merchants recalculate their trade routes. Scythian tribes beyond the Caucasus sense weakness in Persian border defenses. The empire that stretched from India to Libya suddenly looks vulnerable. But Themistocles understood something about naval warfare that military commanders still study today. Sometimes the best weapon isn't the biggest fleet or the strongest ships. Sometimes the best weapon is making your enemy's strength into their weakness. The Persians brought 700 ships to Salamis because they thought numbers guaranteed victory. Instead, those 700 ships became 700 targets trapped in a killing funnel with nowhere to run. Geography, tactics, timing. 3 elements that turned a desperate last stand into the most decisive naval victory in ancient history. Persian naval power never recovers. The survivors of Salamis retreat to Asian ports and spend the next decade rebuilding ships and training crews. But the psychological damage is permanent. Persian admirals become cautious, hesitant, unwilling to risk major engagements against Greek fleets. The Aegean Sea becomes a Greek lake. Greek confidence soars. Within 5 years, Athens forms the Delian League and begins collecting tribute from 200 allied cities. Greek colonies spread across the Black Sea, southern Italy, Sicily. The culture that produced Salamis produces Pericles, Sophocles, Herodotus, Hippocrates. Victory breeds ambition. Ambition breeds empire. The morning after Salamis, Greek crews row among the wreckage, collecting spoils and counting bodies. Herodotus records that Persian corpses washed ashore on Salamis beaches for 3 days after the battle. Local fishermen find Persian armor and weapons in their nets for decades afterward. The bay becomes a graveyard that local Greeks treat as sacred ground. Persian survivors flee to Phaleron Bay, 8 kilometers east of Salamis. Xerxes orders an immediate muster to assess his losses. Of 700 ships that entered the strait, fewer than 300 answer the call. Some are damaged beyond repair, others are missing entirely, their crews either dead or deserted. The Persian naval advantage has evaporated in 6 hours of combat. But the true genius of Salamis lies in its timing. Themistocles doesn't just defeat the Persian fleet, he destroys it at the exact moment when Persian land forces depend on naval supply. September is harvest season in Asia Minor. Persian grain ships should be crossing the Aegean loaded with wheat and barley to feed Xerxes' army. Instead, they're sitting in harbors, afraid to venture into waters patrolled by victorious Greek triremes. The logistical mathematics are brutal. 800,000 Persian troops require 400 tons of grain daily. Transport that overland from Anatolia, and you need a supply train stretching 200 kilometers. Persian armies conquered through speed and naval logistics. Remove the ships, and the war machine collapses under its own weight. Mardonius, Xerxes, cousin and senior general, understands the crisis immediately. He approaches the great king 3 days after Salamis with a desperate proposal: retreat to Asia with the bulk of the army. Leave 50,000 picked troops to winter in Greece and finish the conquest the following spring. It's the only option that salvages Persian prestige while acknowledging military reality. Xerxes agrees because he has no choice. The retreat begins in October, 480 BCE. Persian engineers dismantle the bridge across the Hellespont, the same bridge that carried the invasion force into Europe 6 months earlier. Greek ships harry the Persian withdrawal, capturing supply vessels and attacking isolated army units. What began as conquest ends as humiliation. The psychological impact spreads beyond Greece. Egyptian priests who serve Persian pharaohs begin plotting rebellion. Babylonian merchants recalculate their trade routes away from Aegean markets they can no longer reach safely. Scythian tribes beyond the Caucasus sense weakness in Persian border defenses and start raiding southern satrapies. But Salamis creates more than just Persian problems. It transforms Athens into a naval superpower almost overnight. Before Salamis, Athens is one Greek city among many, Katein Homaskin, respected for its pottery and silver mines, but not considered a major military force. After Salamis, Athens commands the largest fleet in the Mediterranean, 180 triremes that proved themselves in the most decisive naval battle in history. Other Greek cities start paying attention to Athenian leadership. Within 3 years, Athens forms the Delian League. 200 allied cities contribute either ships or tribute money for mutual defense against Persian resurgence. The treasury sits on the sacred island of Delos. But Athenian admirals control fleet movements and battle tactics. What begins as voluntary alliance becomes Athenian Empire within a decade. The tribute flows like water into Athens. Each allied city contributes based on its size and wealth. Aegina pays 30 talents annually, 1,800 pounds of silver. Thassos pays 30 talents. Abydos pays 10 talents. The total reaches 460 talents per year by 470 BCE. That's 27.5 tons of silver flowing into Athenian coffers annually. Silver builds ships. Ships enforce tribute collection. Tribute builds more ships. The cycle creates the most powerful navy the ancient world has ever seen. By 450 BCE, Athens commands over 300 triremes, nearly as many ships as the entire Persian fleet that attacked Salamis. But Persian naval power never truly recovers from Salamis. The survivors retreat to Asian ports and spend the next decade rebuilding ships and training crews. But the psychological damage proves permanent. Persian admirals become cautious, hesitant, unwilling to risk major engagements against Greek fleets that proved they could win against impossible odds. The Aegean Sea becomes a Greek lake. Persian merchants avoid routes patrolled by Athenian squadrons. Persian warships rarely venture west of Cyprus. The empire that once controlled every major sea route in the eastern Mediterranean finds itself confined to Asian coastal waters. Greek confidence soars in direct proportion to Persian decline. Within 5 years of Salamis, Greek colonies spread across the Black Sea, southern Italy, Sicily. The culture that produced the tactics and courage of Salamis produces Pericles, Sophocles, Herodotus, Hippocrates. Victory breeds ambition. Ambition breeds cultural flowering. Cultural flowering produces the intellectual foundation of Western civilization. The Parthenon rises above Athens, starting in 447 BCE, built with tribute silver collected by the fleet that won at Salamis. The temple's marble columns stand as monuments to naval victory 28 years earlier. Persian defeat funds Greek art. Persian humiliation enables Greek democracy. Themistocles himself doesn't live to see Athens reach its cultural peak. Political rivals exile him in 470 BCE, accusing him of taking bribes from Persian agents. He flees to the Persian court where Artaxerxes, son of Xerxes, grants him sanctuary and a pension. The admiral who destroyed Persian naval power dies in Persian service in 459 BCE. The irony runs deeper than exile. Themistocles' tactical victory at Salamis creates the Athenian Empire that ultimately destroys Greek unity. The same ships that saved Greek freedom become instruments of Athenian domination. Allied cities that joined the Delian League voluntarily find themselves trapped in tribute arrangements. They can't escape without facing Athenian naval attack. The Persian Wars end Greek independence as surely as Persian conquest would have, just more slowly and from within. Sparta watches Athens grow rich and powerful on naval tribute, then spends 3 decades fighting the Peloponnesian War to break Athenian dominance. Greek fights. Greek until both sides exhaust themselves, leaving Macedonia to inherit the power that Salamis created. But none of that diminishes what happened in Salamis Strait on September 23rd, 480 BCE. Geography became weapon. Numbers became weakness. 370 ships destroyed 700 ships through superior tactics, superior preparation, and superior understanding of naval warfare physics. The bronze ram fragments scattered across Salamis' seafloor tell the story in metal and corrosion. Impact marks show ramming angles. Hull planks reveal construction techniques. Pottery shards indicate ship origins and cargo contents. Human remains confirm casualty reports written 25 centuries ago. Recent underwater excavations near Salamis have uncovered something that reframes everything we thought we knew about the battle. Bronze fragments from Persian ship rams, yes, but also evidence of deliberate sabotage, holes drilled in hulls from the inside. Persian ships were sinking before they ever reached Greek battle lines. Ionian crews fighting for Xerxes had turned traitor, scuttling their own vessels rather than attack their Greek kinsmen. The trap wasn't just tactical, it was psychological. Themistocles had counted on Persian subjects choosing freedom over empire when the moment came. 370 Greek ships didn't destroy 700 Persian vessels. 700 Persian ships destroyed themselves.